Good evening and welcome to tonight's Common Council meeting for July 30th, 2024. Clerk will call the roll, please.
Hildebrand,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Penquitz,
Yes.
Gilson,
Yes.
Binder,
Yes.
Herman.
Yes.
Let the record show we have a quorum for the Common Council meeting. Next is the pledge. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. The chair will entertain a motion.
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Clerk will call the roll on the consent agenda, please.
Gilson,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Hildebrand,
Yes.
Herman,
Yes.
Binder,
Yes.
Penquitz.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you. Next item is the audience portion where we ask people to be signed in and recognized by the chair. This is where you do the talking and we do the listening. Tonight, Dick Seefeld has signed up. Dick, you're welcome to speak. You can either do it there, just raise your voice because there's mics in the ceiling, or you can come forward, whatever you're comfortable with. Well, we'll try to make it easy on you.
Well, this is, the city has ordinances for burning in the city. And detachable outdoor heating systems are covered with ordinances. We have a person in our neighborhood that burns 24/7 to heat his pool and making our neighborhood basically useless in the summer because we can't sit outside because he's burning stuff. And I'm here today hoping that we can address that concern. I'm going to call it a problem, but let's go with the concern. And I've taken a survey of the neighborhood, and one night I went out and I got every neighbor to sign saying enough is enough. He's burning stuff. I've been working on this for 3 years. I've talked to the city administrator, I've talked to Pete, I've talked to the fire chief, I've talked to the police when Jeff was in there. This is a 3-year thing, and you guys are my last hope. I can't, my dad, 93, he can't open his windows in the summer because it stinks. We have an ordinance in the winter, you making it so hard to burn wood in the city, basically you can't. So I'm just asking that we at least look at this, and I've tried to talk to him. Again, it's been 3 years. It's nothing new. He's unwilling to play by the rules. And I think, I didn't even know this existed, but I'm here now asking you to do something about it. And I have a handout that I'll give to you on my way out, and you guys can all take a look at it. It spells it out pretty plainly. How'd I do?
Good.
Thank you very much for coming and talking to the
Well,
council.
thanks for listening. Here, take it. Here, from school. Take one, pass it down. Thank you.
Moving on to item 5, no items were removed from the consent agenda, therefore it's not needed. Item 6, I declare a public hearing open on ordinance number 9 floodplain. This evening, our City Department of Public Works Director, Kathy Austin, will give us a brief comment on what is the ordinance number 9 floodplain about.
Sure. So this is brought before you guys at the committee of the whole meeting on May 28th to discuss the recommendations and the requirements that are needed to our floodplain ordinance to be eligible for our residents to get flood insurance at a reduced rate. We are required to enforce these ordinances to the properties within the floodplain, again, to then ensure the DNR and FEMA that we're doing such. So they've Relooked at the floodplain study for Sheboygan County, and then with that, they've created a new model ordinance that we need to implement within our ordinances. One caveat is that Act 175, we talked about that in May, is that 50% rule change. So there's still rules and requirements that these property owners on non-conforming buildings would need to meet. But then the financial piece, the 50%, is not a holdup of why they can't meet those requirements anymore. So at that meeting, the Committee of Whole recommended incorporating that language, and then it was presented at the Plan Commission on July 11th, and they concurred that we should change our ordinance to model the DNR requirements, and then also include the Act 175.
Thank you. At this point, the chair will recognize anyone else who wants to speak on the changes as Director Austin indicated that this was recommended by the Plan Commission and forwarded on to the council. As we talked earlier, any ordinance adoption comes to the council. Hearing none, I declare the public hearing closed. The chair will entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 9, floodplain ordinance, as adopted.
I make a motion to approve ordinance number 9, floodplain.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Clerk will call the roll on ordinance number 9.
Penquitz,
Yes.
Binder,
Yes.
Herman,
Yes.
Hildebrand, Gilson,
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you. Moving on to number 7, ordinance number 10, an ordinance amending section 2-4-13 of the General Code of Ordinances of the City of Plymouth, Wisconsin, regarding committee residency requirements. I'll ask Tim Blakely, our city administrator, for some brief comments. Tim.
Sure. So municipal code section 2-4-13 states that no person who is not a resident of Plymouth and not residing in the city of Plymouth shall be appointed to any board or commission. And if someone moves from Plymouth, they have to be immediately removed from that board or commission. However, recently, several long-term members of our revolving loan fund committee have moved outside city limits. We also had one member of the ad hoc housing committee who is leaving shortly, or maybe he's actually just recently left, but still lives locally and works locally, supporting the community. Those RLF committee members, again, have business and volunteer ties in the community, and it's about 82-year loss of institutional knowledge on the committee. So the draft proposed ordinance, should council approve, recognize that there are some unique circumstances where potential volunteers are not residents, but very strong ties to the community would be worthwhile adding to committees. So staff does recommend that any appointment under this proposed change require a 3/4 vote by council, really to emphasize the need for careful review of these appointments. This does not apply to those committees that require residency by statute, so such as your plan commission, your police and fire commission, library board, joint review board, etc. So pending approval of this ordinance, staff would bring these individuals back to reappointment at the council meeting. Again, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. The chair will entertain a motion so we can discuss the changes to ordinance number 10, residency.
I'll make a motion that we discuss ordinance 10. Second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion?
And then just for clarification, is that a motion to approve ordinance 10?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Thank you. Any discussion? Clerk will call the roll on the changes to ordinance number 10, amending section 2-4-13.
Gilson,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Hildebrand,
Yes.
Herman,
Yes.
Binder,
Yes.
Penquitz.
Yes.
Motion carried, thank you. And as City Administrator Tim indicated, this required a 3/4 vote And with 6 members, we have our 3/4 vote, so it is affirmed.
And so this would be a 3/4 vote for appointments. The ordinance itself would just require a majority.
Correct.
Yep,
This is for the ordinance.
for the ordinance.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on to item 8, new business, approve addition to the outage management system project. We had this in the committee of the whole earlier this evening. Basically, we are looking at a system to tie the two systems together. An approved cost of $41,775. Tim, do you want to add anything to that? or-
Yeah, just a brief addition. Essentially, this project is one of our 2023 to 2026 strategic plan initiatives to really develop that outage management system. By tying these together, we're going to have faster outage response. We're going to be able to use that for, data-driven decisions and really make our electric grid higher performing overall. So essentially, as the mayor said, this is a not to exceed cost of $41,775. We had a project come in $17,000 under budget. Our interest has come in above average this year, which can help cover the additional cost. And then we will obviously monitor costs throughout the year to keep this a budget neutral expense.
Thank you. And we also have some of our utility people here tonight. Nick, do you want to add anything to that? I know we talked about it a half an hour ago, but that's fine.
It's up
Okay.
to you. If you want to give a quick summary on what it does, just for the video.
Sure, I guess this brings in the real-time meter data from our different systems together to drive, our in real-time outage reporting, eventually prediction of where the outage is, and can also get into transformer loading, kind of engineering analysis on our distribution system, just to give us better data-driven decisions on, do we have the proper size transformers, do we have the right protection out on the line, and make those decisions better and more reliably.
Okay, good. Thank you. We have a first and a second. Any other discussion?
I think we still need a first and a second.
Did we have that? Oh, okay. Thank you. The chair will entertain a motion so we can discuss.
I'll move to approve the addition to the outage management system project with a one-time, not to exceed cost of $41,775.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Any comment? Clerk will call the roll, please.
Penquits,
Yes.
Binder,
Yes?
Herman,
Yes.
Hildebrand,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Gilson.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you. Moving on to item B, approval of agreement with Witkowski Inspections Agency LLC for building inspector services. Tim, you want to give us a brief summary?
Sure, I'll give a brief summary. So in October of this upcoming year, Inspector Shireman is planning to retire. That is currently a contracted position. As part of the '24 budget, we did plan to bring this position in-house. We recruited this position relatively heavily for several months and did not receive applicants with enough experience to consider moving forward. Staff did reach out to peers and several contacts at recruiting firms, indicating that this is one of the hardest positions to fill, given the level of credentialing required. So at the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting on June 25th, staff did present sort of a two-pronged approach, contracting out the inspector position only, and then bringing the zoning administration duties in-house as part of a new position. So the Finance Committee did recommend moving forward with that approach. So over the past several weeks, staff has finalized a draft agreement with Witkowski Inspections. Brian Witkowski is here tonight to answer any additional questions. Currently conducts inspections in Sheboygan Falls, Kohler, Elkhart Lake, Waldo, and a number of other smaller towns in the area. The draft agreement is included as attachment 1. Witkowski Inspections does have the experience and certifications to complete the work. However, because some of the zoning duties and zoning administration costs, the fee for Witkowski inspection is going to be 80% of permit revenue. Inspector Shireman is 90% of permit revenue, and that zoning administrator cost per month. Witkowski inspection has provided an updated fee schedule, so the rates presented by Witkowski are recommended by staff. Mr. Witkowski and I did have a back and forth on the rates, and we've come to rates that we agree are reasonable moving forward. Over 50% of those rates remained unchanged from 24 to 25. There are some minor increases to some permits. We do have one new permit for some higher end electrical work for large businesses. And it provides a little change how custom plans reviews are charged. Inspector Shireman sort of does a one-time fee to review. Mr. Witkowski's charge is a hourly rate. I would say those are going to be relatively rare in the future, considering we're going to bring some of that zoning review in-house. Likely most of that will happen at the city level, and there won't be a fee for that. Most permit rates have not changed since 2013, other than a handful of additions in 2022. And as part of the agreement, the permit rates will remain the same until 2025. Witkowski inspections will be at City Hall 10 hours per week for office hours. Inspector Shireman currently does 6 hours per week. He was at 8 hours per week about a year ago, so has kind of shifted down as he's planning to retire. Again, he may be staffing the office hours or maybe a staff member of his company. This is a 3-year agreement, and then pending approval, we will have a resolution for the schedule of fees as item 9A. And then at the next meeting, we'll present the sort of part 2 of this, which is the assistant administrator and then the community development director job description. So obviously happy to answer any questions.
So this is partly related to our resolution 9A for the adjustment in the fees.
Correct. So we've got the contract approval, that is this item, and then later in the meeting, we'll have 9A, which is the resolution for the.
Okay, and the overall cost of making the switch from Pete Schreierman to Witkowski, where does that put us?
Yeah, so currently Pete Shireman is at 90% permit fee and then $1,200 per month for zoning administrator. Witkowski inspections is at 80% permit revenue. And there are again some adjustments to the permits. So I would say we're going to be about even maybe a little, we'll probably be a little bit higher on permit revenue at the city side due to the change in percentage collected.
Okay, I'll save my next comment for Chair will entertain a motion so we can discuss.
I move to approve the addition to the outage, I approve the agreement with Witkowski Inspections Agency for building inspector services.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Now my other question is, are we somewhat revenue neutral on this, on the switch over plus the duties for zoning?
Yeah, I would say it's somewhat revenue neutral. Again, that sort of 10% difference is going to go toward the new position as part 2 of the approach that we're taking. But otherwise, yeah, this is a very relatively revenue neutral change.
And when does this become effective? What's the switch over from?
Sure. So the Witkowski inspections will start late August. As part of this, there'll be about a week before where he can work with Pete and get a lay of the land for the office. Potentially they'll meet in advance. I know that they're colleagues in the field to get a handle on it. And then Pete is planning to step down at the end of October. If Pete said, hey, I could be out of here October 1, he probably would be ready to do that too. So.
Okay. As Tim mentioned, Mr. Witkowski is in the audience this evening, and he is available if anybody has any questions or concerns on the switchover from Pete to Witkowski. John?
I'm just wondering about, I don't know how this worked in the past, but if somebody out there is requesting an inspection, how is the logistics of that going to be taken care of? How did the City Hall takes care of?
Well, he answers his own phone.
Oh, he does.
He has his hours downstairs, which are from 4 to 10.
Yeah, so it'll be whatever, he'll be able to set his office hours as needed. He'll set his schedule. Permits will still flow through their office. So we're not going to be handling the permit documents. The zoning stuff is going to start coming to the city side as part of this, but
all the permit stuff still goes to the building inspector, which will be Mr. Witkowski.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? Anything you want to add, Mr. Witkowski, to what you heard presented? You know Pete, so you always have a backstop there, I suppose. Any comments you want to make? This is your 30 seconds of fame, so you get to brag or whatever.
No, I think, you know, in other municipalities that Pete had, that I guess that we exchanged over, or that I do now for him, like Falls and Kohler, the transition was very smooth. And I think that would be the best, not only for the community, but also for the town board. Pete and I can work and we can kind of coordinate, hey, this is what we're gonna do. We're just mainly looking for that smooth transition. Him and I both operate pretty much the same as far as, and even talking with Tim, that this should, you know, it would be pretty much, you know, he's there Monday, I'm there Tuesday, and nobody even knew it, that there's a switch over. So that's our goal. I am looking to staff I'm an employee basically that I will have her down there, that I am going to be, she'll be on my payroll, but she will be then holding longer office hours so people can come in and get permits that she is eligible to, I guess, write, because she is an employee of mine, so she has it right. So if someone comes in and wants a road permit, they're not gonna be waiting a day or 2 days, they may get it the same day, to try to make that smooth. So,
Okay, good. Thank you. Any other questions? Clerk will call the roll on approving the contract with Witkowski LLC.
Penquits,
Yes.
Herman,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Binder,
Yes.
Gilson,
Yes.
Hildebrand.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you. Thank you. Look forward to your services. Thank
thanks,
you.
Brian, appreciate it.
Moving on to item C, approval of contract amendment for Ehlers to conduct pro forma reviews. Tim?
Yeah, so we're gonna handle item C and D together as they're related. So city staff is working on the preliminary steps to create tax increment district, or a TID number 7, which will be located on the eastern portion of the city to really accommodate several proposed housing developments and a potential commercial development. So a contract amendment with Ehlers, which is our financial advisors, and an updated agreement with Kapoor, who's our contracted engineer, are necessary to really vet these developments included in the initial phase of TID 7, and then develop a list of those public infrastructure projects and really develop the map of the district. So a lot of this is going to be coming to council at the next several meetings. So there's going to be a lot of more information, but this is really the initial step to kick this off. So Ehlers will really undertake that financial analysis to confirm that some of these developers have a gap in their financial needs. I kind of outlined that in the memo in front of you. They're going to analyze the funding structures, confirm the cost estimates, alternative scenarios and structures, just to make sure that, the need is there. The cost of each of these pro forma reviews, and there's 2, is $10,000 to $15,000. These will initially be funded through our contingency line of the general fund, but when TID 7 is created, they'll be reimbursable out of TID 7 once TID 7 starts generating revenue. Item D is, again, an agreement with Kapoor. So this is to complete engineering needs for the upcoming TID 7, developing a list of public infrastructure projects, legal descriptions and surveys. The rest of the list is in there. It's just general engineering needs that we're going to need as we're creating TID 7. This will be billed on a time and materials basis not to exceed $15,000. And again, same thing. Once TID 7 is created, these costs will be allocated to the TID and be reimbursed to the general fund. So staff does recommend approval of item 8C and 8D. So that's with Ehlers and Kapoor. Phil Clausen is here tonight with Ehlers to answer any additional questions. He's also going to give the presentation here in just a few minutes as well.
Thank you. For council information, we will handle item 8 Charlie and 8 Delta separately. Explanation being that they're both related in a sense to the creation of TID 7, which we'll hear more about shortly. Having said that, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the contract amendment for Ehlers to conduct pro forma reviews.
I make a motion to approve of the contract amendment for Ehlers to conduct pro forma reviews.
Second.
Second, we have a first and a second. Any discussion? Clerk will call the roll, please.
Binder,
Yes.
Pankwitz,
Yes.
Gilson,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Hildebrand,
Yes.
Herman.
Yes.
Motion carried, thank you. Moving on to item D, the second part of this, approval of professional services agreement for a general engineering service with Kapoor. As you heard our city administrator say, this is in relative to the development and work that's coming forward on TID 7. Both of those will be reimbursed once revenue starts to flow into TID 7, so this is not out of the city expenditure at all. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the service agreement with Kapoor.
I'll make a motion to approve professional services agreement with Kapoor.
No second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Clerk will call the roll, please.
Herman,
Yes.
Binder,
Yes.
Gilson,
Yes.
Hildebrand,
Yes.
Pankwitz,
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Motion carried, thank you. Moving on to item E, capital planning and tax incremental district, abbreviated TID, update from Ehlers. Tonight, we are very pleased to have our longtime representative from Ehlers with us to answer questions, and he'll give us a little lesson in 101. Tim, you want to introduce Phil?
Yeah, so tonight, Phil Cossum with Ehlers is going to give a presentation. Phil, I think the keyboard's in front of you. That should go back and forth on the presentation. I don't want to steal too much of Phil's thunder, but just a quick summary. Phil's going to give a presentation tonight on capital planning, big projects we have upcoming, financing those projects, and then again on our tax increment districts. As noted in various communications over the past year, Mill Pond Dam, fire truck, storage shed, we're going to have to take out debt for several projects in the next 3 years. But however, this is really a great time for the city to take that long-term capital financing and move forward. Our current debt limit, we're at 92%, so only 8% of our capacity used. Due to the success and closure of TID number 4, we're going to have a one-time levy limit adjustment of about $370,000. And then there's going to be a corresponding mill rate reduction for city taxpayers as well. The result of all these sort of combinations happening at once is, as we issue this debt, as Phil will describe, there's going to be a limited, if any, impact to the overall tax levy for these long-term capital projects that we have. So I'm going to have Phil go through the presentation, do a little bit of TID 101 as we've got new TIDs incoming for council, and answer any questions.
I think you just covered it.
No. I'm too excited. This
You're
is
not
good
going to get
stuff.
off that easy.
Good. All right, well,
Welcome.
thank you, appreciate it, Mayor and council members, and nice to be back with you. As Tim indicated, we have a variety of topics to talk about. I'll get through this relatively quickly, and if you have questions and I'm not looking at you, flag me down, we'll get those along the way. I will say that as Tim indicated, you've been waiting a long time for this. TID number 4 has been a great success, yet it has limited you a little bit in some of the things you can do. You're at a point now where that is going to be closing out, and as a result, there's some flexibility that the city will have that you didn't have over the last 5-6 years. So really a good news story here along the way. So I'm going to start talking about capital planning. I have not done this with you in quite some time because, again, we've been waiting for the TID closures. So this is a little bit new. I've talked TIF with you over the last number of years, kind of in preparation for the closure of tax increment district number 4. But this is a little bit different take because we are going to be looking at a long-range capital plan. Our goal always is to make sure that we are looking at not just what's going to come next year, but subsequent years after that, and kind of build out a plan based on a lot of assumptions, no doubt, but build out a plan that makes sense for the city and the taxpayers. And goal 1 is to try to mitigate some of the impact of doing capital borrowing. So timing is right for that. So I'll start with some of the base building and fundamentals when it comes to capital planning in our world and what we do for all our municipal clients. And as to really kind of set forth some of the baseline numbers that are really important to understand, so you truly understand what some of the key assumptions are as we go through this. So 1 is what's happening with growth in the city and what are we projecting going forward. So you'll see here what we have is equalized value growth assumptions, which are really critical to absorbing new debt in the future. As you're growing as a tax base, it alleviates some of the concern that you have by issuing debt. So our take on this is that while it's been very robust, the growth in property over the last 3 to 4 years, we don't think that's going to continue at the levels it has. Statewide, we saw 14% growth last year. The year before was about 9-10%. So enormous growth statewide, and you see that likely in your property values, home sale prices, all those kind of things that have really jumped over the last number of years. So to be a little more conservative, what we have used is 50% of what's happened over the last 5 years. And just said, we're going to just be a little more conservative with what we project going forward. So your economic change is really just what's happened essentially with existing property in the city. And you've been averaging over 6% over the last 5 years with just economic change. We're going to scale that down and use 3.25% for economic change going forward. And net new construction, which is the new growth that happens within the city, not just the city, but within the tax increment districts, was a little under 1.5%, so we're going to use 0.7%. So a little under 5% combined is what we're going to be using, I'm sorry, a little under 4% is what we're going to be using going forward as part of the modeling. So that's, again, kind of base building, 50% of what's historically been done over the last 5 years and what you've actually realized. So one of the things that, again, has led to this point is that you're going to be closing, you have closed TID number 4. That's got a value of 166, almost 167 million. Thursday, we'll have new valuation numbers come out. That will be all the TID valuations around the state, along with equalized value, along with net new construction. All of that gets dropped on August 1st as preliminary numbers. So that's a scramble day in our office, trying to figure out what's going on and trying to make sure that we understand the numbers that are out there. But the closure of TID number 4 really will first be realized in budget year 2026. So when you start talking about capital planning and you start talking about tax impact, that closure date and when it hits the budget is really key. So when you look at the capital planning, even though we're looking at projects in 2025, those debt payments don't hit until 26 when you see that big bump due to the TID closure of number 4. So you have other districts that are in place. We are not factoring those in because the TID closure dates are kind of beyond the scope of what we're really looking at here at this time. So with that, numbers, and a lot of them. I'm not going to dive into this. This just is the numbers behind what I just went through with you, that we're using 50% of historically what has happened. And you can see in the far right bottom corner, that's the closure of TID number 4 coming online in 25, budget year 26. So that's really what this is referencing, is all the numbers that are behind the assumptions that we make that you can study later on at your leisure. So where are you today before you take out any new debt? That's what we call our base case. And if you look at this chart, what you'll see here is that we have the year, we have total debt payments. This is general obligation debt, so debt that has been taken out against the general levy, even though a lot of this has been related to other types of funding for like utilities and TID 4, TID 5, and TID 6. But you have your debt payments outstanding, and then you have the offsetting revenues where it says less water, less utility, less TID 4, TID 5, and TID 6. And in the middle of the page where it says net tax levy, that's what you're actually levying on your taxes for your debt service payments. So last year, 486, or this year, I'm sorry, budget year 24, 486, almost $87,000, which equated to a tax rate per thousand of 53 cents per thousand. So all we're doing is taking the debt levy divided by the total value of the community TID out to get to that tax rate per thousand. And for the average homeowner of $250,000 home, that's $133.51 annually. So everybody understand the math that I went through as I walked through that? Yes, no, yes, okay. So if you look at what's happening going forward in 25, that number drops to about 40 cents per thousand. 26 drops to 20 cents per thousand, and it's completely wiped out already in 2028. That is flexibility. You have the ability to take on new projects and keep really your debt service levy roughly where you are today without seeing a spike in tax rates to get projects done. So this is the power of the TID closure and growth that you are seeing within the community happening over the last number of years. So before I leave that, just want to make sure, are there any questions on that? So we're going to build off of this base case. Again, this is where you are today without taking on any new projects. And we're going to build off of that with the projects that have been identified and provided to me by city staff. And you can see the list of projects here. We have the Mill Pond Dam, we have road projects, we have utility projects, we have the electric storage building, fiber extension station, substation, Grove Street, a couple placeholders, I'll call them, for future capital projects, projects that may move forward in the future, but yet have not been brought forward to the council at this time. And then also the fire truck, which was out in 27, meaning you better get it ordered pretty soon because it takes about 2 years these days to get a fire truck delivered. But all in total, you have about $10.5 million. Now, not all of this, as you can see, is covered from the general levy. It's going to impact the utilities along the way as well. So we will offset these project costs by the funds that are going to actually pay for that, and I'll show you that in a little bit. This is the capital list as of today. Once this model is built, it's easy to kind of build off of this and add subsequent years, add projects, subtract projects, and move projects around as they come forward. But this is the list that we're working from at this time. Any questions on this page? All right. So we provided two options for you. One option that shows all the capital and projects being financed over 15 years, and the other with all the capital projects being financed over 20 years. Now, I would say that option one at this point is probably viable, that you could shorten up the debt payments a little bit because you have so much of your debt that's dropping off over the next couple of years. You should be able to absorb these projects and pay it off a little bit more rapidly, and I'll show you that in a little bit. Plus, we want to make sure that when we look at borrowing funds, that we're really borrowing from the life of the asset. We're not going to borrow money over 20 years for an asset that you're purchasing that's going to last 10 years. Similar to like if you're going to go out and borrow for a new car and not taking out a 20-year loan for a car. Although some cars last that long these days. You wouldn't want to pay it off over 20 years. So we do have two different options in here. Interest rate wise, we're using a very conservative 4.25% at 20-year amortization. If you borrowed money today for 20 years, you'd probably be closer to around 3.75. So we've kind of bumped that up a little bit just to be a little more conservative with some of the assumptions that we're using as well. So those are a couple of the assumptions, again, that we're using as part of this modeling. Again, a lot of numbers on a page. On the next page, page number 8. This is just our model in borrowing funds. So we're gonna package some of these projects together. We have some being borrowed in 25, some in 26, some in 27. You could, when you get close to these time frame to undertake these projects, you may want to look at a 2-year borrowing. It's an option. Instead of doing all, 2 different issues over 2 years, you could maybe do 1 issue and then skip a year. That's another option you could look at as well. Right now, it's a unique time. It's a little bit different than what I've seen over the last decade plus, and that is you borrow money at 3.75, and while you're holding the money, you can probably earn 5.25%. So there's no harm in borrowing some monies in advance of projects at this point, because you can earn more than where you're borrowing money. You can't do that forever. That's called arbitrage, and arbitrage is a bad thing, but you have a limit on how long you can do that. It's really a 3-year window that you have to spend the money. So there are some restrictions around that, but it's a unique time where you can actually earn more on the unspent bond proceeds than what you are actually borrowing the money at. So this just models out that you're going to do 3 separate financings to undertake all the projects that were identified. So let's talk tax analysis. I mentioned that we have 2 different options here. So the in the blue is where you are today. Okay, the first 3 columns is that base case that I had talked about before. So again, if you remember, we're at about 53 cents per thousand in 2024, 40 cents per thousand in 25. That's today where you are. The models with all the borrowings for all the projects, that 10.5 million in projects, if you look at the 2 different scenarios, it takes you to right around 58 cents per thousand in the 15-year option. At a peak, right now you're at 54 cents per thousand, or 53 cents per thousand. And then in the second option, it takes you about 49 cents per thousand. So what this is telling you, that you can undertake all these projects that you're looking at without any real spike in your tax rate for debt service. So these are the 2 options that we had looked at, again, a 15 and 20 year window, so you can take a look at what happens year in, year out. The other thing I wanted to note here is that we know that there are always future projects. They don't just have a capital plan and then it just goes away. You're done. It's not how it works. There's always a list that's out there that is kind of percolating, and there's future projects. So you will see that tax rate for debt service in both options really declining for the most part each year once you get beyond that peak in 27. And that's intentional to make sure that you have capacity in the future to take on future projects as well without seeing some big spike in your tax rate. So this is really great news for the city, knowing that you can undertake these projects without a spike in the tax rate for debt service, is what we're projecting here. One of the things I wanted to show you here is that we are showing, this is a little more of the model, and I'll just take you from left to right here really quickly. These are the 3 borrowings that would be undertaken. This is the 15-year option. So the first column is the 2025 borrowing, second column 26 borrowing, third column 27 borrowing, and then we have what's called abatements. And the abatements in this case are the utilities. As you remember, the electrical substation was in there. There were some utility projects related to roads. So I do show their share being paid out of those funds and offsetting the debt service that you see in each of those models to get to that total net debt service levy number. And then we always boil it down to what does it mean to the average taxpayer, homeowner in the city. And that's really the third column from the right, where we talk about the annual taxes that would be due. And again, our goal here, as I stated several times already, is to not have peaks and valleys in your tax rate for debt, but a relatively level debt service payment going forward and declining. So that's what we have built out for option number one, the 15-year option, where again, you can see the portion that would be paid back by the utilities as well. We did the same thing for option two. Again, the 20-year amortization versus the 15, again, with the utility portions being built into this model as well. The 20-year option doesn't even get you to a point where you are today by taking on all the projects as far as the tax rate for debt service. So again, really good news, and really your ability to capture these projects in a way that, again, is not going to be felt by the taxpayers beyond what they're paying right now. One of the things we also look at, you are a rated community and you're rated by Moody's Investors Service, and they do look at a lot of different metrics when you go through a rating. One of them is your borrowing capacity. Borrowing capacity to them is flexibility. Can you take on future capital projects? And what this is showing, again, in the blue is historic where you are today. You're at 13% of your borrowing capacity. Well, after 23, you're about 8% of your borrowing capacity. So what is that? Every community in the state has the ability to borrow for general obligation purposes, and it's 5% of the total value of your community sets that 5% is the borrowing capacity for the city. So in your case, if you look at 2024, the third column from the left, you can see your borrowing capacity right now is $57.8 million. You can borrow up to $57 million, is what that's telling you. It's always easy to borrow money, it's hard to pay it back. I tell my wife that all the time. And so you can see that you're at, all you have for outstanding debt right now is about $4.7 million. You're using very little of your borrowing capacity. Even with the different models, the model that we have built out, and this is the 15-year option, you can see that you never even get to 20% of your borrowing capacity. So you have a lot of residual borrowing capacity for future projects. These projects that have been identified are not going to hamstring the city at all. You have plenty of flexibility in the future to take on other projects. So if that's a concern, this should be able to answer that. Moody's would look at this and say, you know, as long as you're under 50%, you know, you're not going to get nicked for that. They know you're going to have to borrow money for certain capital projects, just to kind of keep up with what's going on in the city. And again, this would be viewed very favorably, even with the borrowings that are being projected here, that you're still under 20% of your borrowing capacity. So that's, that just means you have flexibility going forward. So before I leave the capital planning, there's no action tonight, I should have said that. We're not asking you to borrow money tonight, that's going to be next year. Likely is when we'll bring that forward. We want to kind of set the table for you to better understand process-wise and also what impacts there are when you go out and borrow money. But again, that's a whole separate action that would be brought in front of the council in the future to take on capital projects. So questions on this first part? A lot of numbers. I'm a numbers geek, I love numbers. Anybody else? Any questions?
Bottom line is we're in darn
You're in
good shape.
Yeah, that's because you haven't borrowed any money for a while. That's why I'm never here. But yes, you're in great shape. All right, let's talk about TID. When I put this together, Tim asked me to put together kind of a few slides to kind of get you familiar with, again, with tax increment financing. Well, I've come and done kind of what is TIF in the past. You haven't really created a new district in quite some time. So as you heard earlier, we are at least in discussions and starting the process of looking at creating TID number 7 and potentially down the road another TID, but that's for another discussion. TID 7 on the eastern part of town. It's kind of coming together slowly, but we're working on it, and there are some developments that are kind of triggering the need for this, and thank you for approving our contract to do the pro forma review. That's a big step in that to make sure that there's truly a gap that needs to be filled. But what is TIF? You hear me use the term TIF and TID somewhat interchangeably. TIF is the tool. It's the state of Wisconsin Department of Revenue runs a program called tax increment financing. And when you create a district, it's actually a district. So the tax increment district is what you create using the TIF tool. And it's really the only tool, the only significant tool in the state of Wisconsin to promote development and redevelopment, blight elimination, environmental remediation in the state of Wisconsin. And it really allows municipalities to use the value of what's being generated in the district and take that money and roll it back into the district to help with the development and redevelopment of an area. So it is the tool that the city has used very effectively as well over the years to assist some of the local companies, including Sartori and Masters Gallery and Sargento, and a variety of others over the years. So they've all benefited from the city's partnership with them through the use of tax increment financing. So how is it set up? So as we're going through and starting to create tax increment district number 7, there's a baseline of property, and the property is, the base value is essentially what is there today when you create the district. So in my example, I used to say we have 10 parcels and each parcel has a value of $10,000. So that $100,000 is the base value. The base value of what's there today gets shared with all the taxing bodies. So the school, county, technical college, and the city all get their piece of the pie. And then as development occurs out there, and just say that 100,000 goes to 1,100,000 due to a new development, the $1 million increase, that's the increment. And the increment, the taxes collected on that stays with the city. And the city takes that, puts it in a separate fund to use to be able to reinvest into that tax increment district. So that's what TIF is, and that's the power of TIF. You're really using the whole tax bill on new development to reinvest into the tax increment district. So the value after the termination of the district is what we're dealing with TID number 4. It comes back off once it's completed, and then you get a bump in levy limits, a few other benefits, tax impact. There was a slight reduction in the tax rate as a result of that coming online as well. So the power of TIF is really shown here, and that is we ask through the process all the other taxing bodies to come to the table. And they have the ultimate say as to whether or not the district will be created. So there's a group called the Joint Review Board. One of your Joint Review Board members is sitting up here. That is a member of, in this case, Lakeshore Technical College, the Plymouth School Districts, Sheboygan County. The city has a representative. Typically, it's the chief elected official. Not always, but many times. And then a citizen member that is appointed by the council. That 5-member board has the ultimate say whether or not a tax increment district will be put into place. Because what we're asking that group to do is forego the taxes on the new development until the district is closed up. That's why they have the ultimate say whether or not a district will be created. And they're part of the process. So the power of tax increment district is, instead of, in this example, you collecting $6.50 per thousand on that new development, you're collecting $20 per thousand on that new development and reinvesting that into the area. So before I leave this, are there any questions on how that works, the math works behind TIFs? In your case, you have outstanding TIFs right now, 4, 5, and 6. All 3 of them have a separate fund that is paying back obligations of the tax increment district. And we're all approved through this process with the Joint Review Board as well. So that's part of the building block. So why do you use TIF? Well, it's really to deal with, in most cases, infrastructure to support development or redevelopment, so that it's a cost that's not in the general tax levy and or on the utility users. So you can pay for public infrastructure as part of tax increment districts. Also, it allows you the ability to provide direct incentives to potential end users, developers or businesses. They can realize the benefit of a tax increment district. That pro forma review that was approved is trying to get down to the bottom line of, do you truly have a gap in your financing? And that's where the TIF money goes, to help with the gap in the financing. And it's really, in this case, a cooperation between public and private sectors. I think it's served the city well. Some of your largest employers and taxpayers in the city, you've partnered with through the use of tax increment financing. Again, I mentioned Sartori in TID 4, Masters Gallery in TID 5, and Great Lakes Cheese in TID 5 as well, and then TID 6, Sargento. All were part of that process, along with other businesses that received some benefit either through direct incentives that were provided or the infrastructure that the city put in to serve those businesses over time. So it's really an economic development tool and a way to cooperate and work collaboratively with local businesses and developers to make sure that, one, you keep them in town, and two, they thrive and grow in your community. It's also a way to generate activity that you may not normally see otherwise. So in Sheboygan County, I work for many communities in Sheboygan County, there's a housing shortage, just like there is in many parts of the state. And tax increment financing is being used, I can tell you, in Sheboygan and Sheboygan Falls and Elkhart Lake on projects that are really dealing with housing and different levels of housing to make sure that there is availability of housing units for potential employees of these local businesses as well. So it's really a tool also that allows you the ability to work with different developers to bring in different housing stock that you may not normally see built in your community. So what's happening right now with your existing districts? Again, this is going to change on Thursday, but TID number 4 again was created in 2001, 166.4 million. We went through a variety of amendments to TID number 4, I think like 4 different amendments over the years. The 25 increment is used for affordable housing initiatives. And then again, as I indicated, it'll really hit in 2026 budget is when you're going to see the real impact of the closure of TID number 1. TID number 5, created in 2008, has an incremental value of 25.6 million. Positive fund balance, no projected closure at this time. I would feel better if we had numbers on Thursday projected in here, and we could give you more of a concrete closure date, but TID 5 is performing very well. TID 6 was created for Sargento in 2011, of a value of 7.8 million out there, and there is a negative fund balance and no projected closure at this time. But over time, we feel like it's going to work its way out and end up in the positives as well. So TID 4 will be off the books, and then 5 and 6 will just kind of play out, because I don't think there's a lot that's going to transpire in either 5 or 6 going forward. It's just really kind of increment being collected and paying back obligations that have been taken out for those tax increment districts. I mentioned TID number 7 that we're working on the east side of the city to accommodate, a couple of potential housing developments and also a potential commercial development at this point. We already are in discussion. That's why I thank you for the contract approval. We're already working on these. In fact, we had emails going back and forth with one of the developers today to get more information from them. But there are a couple of concrete developments that will hopefully generate positive increment right away in these districts. And we're still working through some of the project cost side and finalizing mapping on what the actual boundaries will look like. We're close. And then there's the possibility, well, I should also mention that TID 7 information will be going out as early as August 12th. Meaning we'll be sending out a public hearing notice on tax increment district number 7, and we will need by about August 19th, 20th, we'll need to have a draft project plan at the city clerk's office for the droves of people that want to come in and read TID project plans, which is nobody, but statutorily we're really required to have those in-house. So that's coming very quickly throughout the month of August and September. Tax increment district number 8 is being discussed as potentially a downtown tax increment district to assist the commercial development. I was on a call with them today as well. I think we've come to the conclusion after talking with your assessor that is going to delay at least several months later than tax increment district number 7 for a variety of reasons I don't need to get into tonight with you, but it is going to be not on the same timeline. It'll come a couple months later. Questions? Yes?
So the taxing entities that do not participate in the growth part of the TID district, eventually at the end, they'll realize some kind of income from that. Will some of them have to maybe increase their tax rate during the time period that TID grows to collect from the other properties that aren't in the TID?
Well, so I would say only if they are being asked to service the new growth area. So if there's anyone that's going to probably see a potential small increase in maybe the city, because you may have to plow snow out there, on the new streets that are being built in the tax increment district to provide service in those areas. School districts are held harmless. There's calculation, funding mechanism is really pupils and valuation, and if you are not seeing value growth and you get more pupils, just say potentially in TID 7, they'll get more increased funding from the state as a result of that. So they're really held harmless. I wouldn't see LTC or the county really having an impact.
Okay.
That's a good question, though. One we get a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Well, TID's run 20 years.
No, I didn't add like another whole slide deck. Like we do TIF 101. I just did it for a group and it was an hour long, so I've spared you tonight. But there's different rules and tied to the different types of districts. This TID 7 will be a mixed use district, meaning it has multiple land uses. Could have residential, commercial, industrial, could have a variety of land uses. That has a maximum 20-year life. The downtown district, if that comes to fruition, will likely be a blight or rehab district. There's two different types, blight or rehab. And it'll be likely one or the other of those, and that'll be a 27-year long life. So depends on the type of district, and when you create the district, you determine the type of district. So either 20 or 27 years.
What helps you determine when you close a TID?
Yeah, the law is very clear. The statutes are very clear. It's once you have collected enough increment, that increase in taxes, that incremental value, once you have collected enough increment to pay off your obligations, you're required statutorily to close out your TIF. You can't just keep it open to keep it open. So the only way to keep a district open longer, if you have paid off all your obligations, is one, take on new projects, within the district, keep it open that way. Or if there's a possibility of doing some revenue sharing between districts as well, you can keep it open for that purpose. But you are required, either it's the termination date, that 20 or 27 years, or when you've collected enough increment to pay off your obligations, then you're required to pay it all off and close out the district. And that's the point we're at with TID 4. We've been monitoring that for the last I don't know, 4 or 5 years at least, talking about the possibility of closing that district. And then you're kind of weighing, do we take on more projects, keep it open, do we get the tax benefit of closing it out? You know, there's no right or wrong answer. Some communities say, keep it open, let's get some projects done in and around the area. And other communities just say, let's close it out as soon as possible and get tax relief. But the statutes are very clear on when you have to close it out.
When we were talking about closing TID 4, I know that, I think we had some discussion about you can only have so many TID districts open, so many TIDs open at a time, right? And so 7's coming out because they're closing 4, I assume, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So if you're gonna bring 8 out, does that mean we have to close one of the other ones?
No, I spared you from the big deck, but there's always percentages, right? There's something called the 12% test in TIF world, and that is when you add up all of the values of your existing districts, the increment, plus the base value of a new district, it can't exceed 12%. If it does, then you're tipped out, meaning you can't create any new districts. The city has been tipped out for a long time because of TID 4, that you didn't have capacity to take on new districts. So when 5 and 6 were created, TID 4 was still kind of building, right? There was still development happening out there. So you had capacity to still create 5 and 6. But over the last, I would guess the last 7 or 8 years at least, you've been tipped out. So we had to close 4 before we could tackle any new districts. With the closure of 4, you're going to be way under the 12% test. And I don't see that you're going to be tipped out anytime soon. So you have capacity to take on new ones in the future.
So that's part of the decision-making process of
Yeah.
how to close things out.
Yeah, well, that's another factor that comes into play. There are places that say, we'll absorb a little bit of debt because we need to redevelop some area and we need to create a new district, but let's close one out. So that's another factor you can look at.
I think the important thing there is that being tiffed out for about 10 years, we still had to close it statutorily. And in that process, we were able to use the balance. We're not allowed to add projects at a certain point in the age of the TIF. So that balance continued to build, and that's why we created the housing subsidy in the final year. We extended it 1 year, that was before some of you were on council, so that we could have that project money available for future benefit to the city. And so the decision was, do we extend it as we did and get that increment, or do we close it early? Having nothing on the drawing board and looking at that approximately what, 2.3
2.3 to 2.6.
2.3 to 2.6, that's what we're going to reap in the benefits of our housing fund that we can then divvy up and use accordingly. So without having something on the drawing board and being tiffed out, we looked at the benefit being greater to have that housing fund established rather than cutting it sooner. It would not have done a whole lot difference in the ultimate payout because evaluation is there. So all we did was create, the payout is still approximately the same, but we were able to build that revolving loan fund up. So yeah, we're about 3% now, so
Yeah, you have
The-
plenty of capacity.
the barn doors are wide open.
My guess is TID 5 will close out over the next, probably 7, 8 years. I
Yeah.
haven't looked at it recently, but about that, and then that'll free up more capacity. So I don't envision the city being, even if it's wildly successful, TID 7, I don't envision the city will be tipped out anytime soon.
Good.
Good questions. Any other questions?
Nice summary. You took some of the meat out, which is good because we could be here till breakfast talking about this. But TIFs are very beneficial to the community and what they can assist us to develop. And I think Ford testifies to that very well, to give us an opportunity to grow. And as we're seeing tonight with our debt structure the way it is, it was very nice to hear that we're going to be flatlined on the tax side of things and yet have all this opportunity with us. So it's playing out the way it's supposed to. That's always a nice caveat to have, and certainly over the years, Phil, you've helped us tremendously in my 18 years, and I appreciate it because this, I know it, isn't that terrible? But it's nice to see it work, and it's worked very well. So thank you for all of your effort and guidance as well.
All right.
Thanks, Phil.
I don't know, you're gonna be on vacation. I talked to Tim Daly.
I was gonna say, I'll give you a call from vacation spot and go on there.
Yeah, you better get him tonight because he's gone.
Are you in tomorrow?
Morning if you need.
All right, I do want to talk about something though,
Okay.
after
Okay,
tomorrow morning. All right, thank you, everyone.
sounds good.
Thank you.
Drive careful. Thank you, appreciate it. TIF and TID, they're interchangeable, certainly is something that a lot of communities use, and we've used it very well, and appreciate all of the effort that goes into that, because we're going to start seeing some construction once again in town. Moving on to item 9, resolutions. 9A, approval of resolution 9, amending the building code fee schedule. We talked briefly about this earlier. Tim, you want to explain that? This is regarding our new building inspector.
Yeah, so as part of the agreement with Witkowski Inspections, we did have an updated schedule of fees. Building code fees are set by resolution by the Common Council from time to time. So attached is the building code fee schedule that we did approve in Witkowski Inspections contract. Again, the new schedule of fees will not take place until 2025.
Thank you. The chair will entertain a motion so we can discuss.
I make a motion to approve resolution number 9, amending the building code fee schedule.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Clerk will call the roll, please.
Nelson,
Yes.
Hildebrand,
Yes.
Pankwitz,
Yes.
Herman,
Yes.
Gilson,
Yes.
Bender.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you. This next portion will be going into closed session, and we thank everybody for coming this evening and putting up with some of our discussion and the review and purpose behind TIF and TID. With that, we will come back out of closed session and have 2 votes. Thank you all for coming.
Wellness center.
Yeah.
Let the record now show that we're back in open session on the two closed session items. The chair will entertain a motion on the first item on the two parcels for sale. Alderman Mike, you want to make the motion?
I don't know exactly what the terminology wording is.
Approve the purchase agreement
Yeah.
for parcel
Yeah,
1073 and 1066.
yes, that's what I move.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a first and a second to approve the purchase agreements for the two parcels as indicated. Any discussion?
And Mayor, I would just clarify, it's an option to purchase.
Option.
Option to
Yes, thank you. Roll call, please.
Gilson,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Hildebrand,
Yes.
Herman,
Yes.
Binder,
Yes.
Tankwitz.
Yes.
Motion carried, thank you. And our second closed session item regarding a utility account specialist billing lead. Chair will entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the potential hiring of the utility account specialist billing lead person, subject to section 2-5-9 of the municipal code.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Tankwitz,
Yes.
Binder,
Yes.
Hildebrand,
Yes.
Gilson,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Herman.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you. Thank you all for a long evening. Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.